Good morning, guys. Told you we'd have a story weekend. Got the dogs out this morning, got them out in the grass, let them release all their energy, use the bathroom and stuff, and now I'm sitting out here in the girlfriend's dad's boat. Figured I'd give you guys a little scenery here, excluding this mug, and talk about some other stuff. Auction type stuff I've done in my spare time and things that I've experienced. In Arkansas, when I went to an auction down there. It's my first experience at the auction. I'm standing out back with all of the dealers and technicians and stuff like that, and just private people that are trying to buy cars, and I'm around all these wholesalers and stuff. So as we're standing around talking, some guy pulls up a Mustang, and he's got it parked off to the side, and he's got a bucket of what looks to be like an oil substance. And he's just wiping this car down, wiping everywhere, all over, wiping it all over the paint, wiping it on the headlights and stuff, and then he's drying it all off, so there's this thin film of whatever this product was left behind. And I'm standing, I said, man, what is that? That's awfully shiny. And he says, oh, I'm just trying to get this thing through the auction. The paint is screwed on this thing really, really bad. And he said the best way for us to do it and the cheapest way is to just take some used motor oil, and we wipe the car down with it, makes it real shiny, and then we wipe off all the excess on the outside, run it through the auction, and then people think it's got like a flawless paint job, and it'll last for days and days and days after they buy it. And typically, if it looks good, they won't wash it right away. They'll think that everything's fine, and come a week later, 2 weeks later, whenever it starts to wear off and debris is caking all over it, and they're trying to figure out why it's getting so dirty, they will end up washing the car. And when they wash the car and the car dries, they'll see how screwed up the paint is. That was my first experience on figuring out what's going on with people running vehicles through auctions. Okay, car ran pretty good overall though. That was a light story. So I'm out on the floor with a bunch of people bidding, and I see a 2000. What was that, Chrysler Concorde LXI? It's like a 2000, 2002 or something like that. I forget the year exactly. Beautiful car. I seen it out in the lot. I fired it up. Key was inside. You can go through and check out the vehicles you're going to buy. And if you spend more than $2,500, you have the right to drive the car to test it out. And if you don't spend more than $2,500, I think it's $2,500 or $1,000. I forget what this auction top was. People are bidding on all these random vehicles, but nobody would bid on this car. And I'm standing out there with the sea of people, and it gets down to like $200. I raise my hand at $200, and the guy next to me, $225, $250. I'm raised $300, $400, and I think this guy's not gonna bid anymore. I thought I was gonna steal this car for $400, mind you, cold AC. I think this was one of the first years or something for dual climate control. It has like the gas mileage and everything on the roof. Just a really nice, comfortable car. It looked like an amazing car, like it loaded. And I'm thinking I'm going to get it. The guy he goes like this or something like that. They were going up $50 increments. So it's $425. And then, I do the same thing with my finger. I don't know what it meant. So I stuck my finger up and I go like this. This is $450. And the guy, he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and I said, dude, I'm going to keep going. I just told the guy flat out, I'll run this out to a couple $1,000s before I quit. So he goes and raises his hand again. He's $500, went up a $50 increment. And then I go like this. They're doing something, I'm just mimicking what I seen other people do, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And they said $525, and the guy looks at me, and then I look back at him, and I think for sure he's going to bid again. So I raised my hand, and I said, $600. They said $600, like that. And they called it out, $600. And the guy looked at me and shook his head. And then I can hear him under his breath mumble, you idiot. Because I think he knew what he was going to get himself into. He was more experienced than me. So what I ended up doing was I bought the car. I go out to the parking lot afterwards, and I'm all excited. I bought this car for $600. I said, man, I got me a great vehicle. This is going to be awesome. So I'm going to let it sit. It's idling. Everything's fine. Got hot. It got warm maybe all of 2 or 3 minutes before I shut it back down. So I go home, I grab my uncle, we go out the next day, and we go pick this thing up. I'm super excited. Start the vehicle up, AC's cold, drive it off the lot, get a mile down the road, and you sound like 100 woodpeckers going off underneath the hood. So what the fuck is going on? Pull over on the side of the road, and I'm listening to this engine clatter, just the whole top of the engine clattering. I let it cool down a little bit because I noticed it started to get a little hot. And I said, what the fuck is this, man? Why is this thing now all of a sudden getting hot? So I let it cool down, get down to the service station, and when I'm at the service station, I checked the oil, and I noticed the oil is kind of slimy looking. Like somebody's dumped something in the oil to get this thing to be quiet going through the auction. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to drive this vehicle all the way home. So we go get the trailer, pick up the trailer, and get the vehicle back to the house. And then while I'm sitting out in the garage and I'm taking valve covers apart and looking at all this stuff, I call up one of the Chrysler techs I know, and he says, "You bought a what?" He said, "Dude, you know those motors are notorious for some kind of issue with the oil pump, and then the pickup tube has to be replaced. There's an upgraded pickup tube, and then you got to go through and do all new lifters and stuff, rocker arms. It's a nightmare with those engines." And he said, "I won't buy them. I will not pick them up." And I said, "Why didn't I call this guy first?" I thought for sure. I was gullible. I was young. I was just getting into the business, and I thought for sure that I had a steal of a car for $600. You know, I was going to get a car worth $3,000 or $4,000. But after figuring out the parts and stuff that I would have to put back into this vehicle, it was going to be like something close to like $2,000, $2,500 in parts, and not including all the teardown time and stuff. So I got off the phone. I realized I had to lick my wounds, and I had been had basically. Luckily, it wasn't that bad because I called up a local salvage yard and I said, "What would you take this car for?" And they said, "We'll give you $400 for it." So that was a $200 lesson learned. I took the vehicle to the salvage yard, gave them the title and everything, and said, "You know, it's not worth putting." I lost $200. Learned my lesson. So on to a different scenario. We go to the auction, and my uncle this time is working with a car dealer, and he went there with, it was his group of people. I don't even talk to these people. I just went to observe kind of how he does things. And there's a Crown Vic that goes through. It's got some kind of tick sound. And my uncle keeps telling him, "Look, I've dealt with this before. I believe it's probably some kind of carbon buildup. Vehicle probably hasn't been running a while, and there's a way that you can actually bust the carbon off of the valves. You can do a quick cleaning. It's a little bit more extreme, a little dangerous, but I can do it in a controlled manner to where we don't have these issues." And the dealer's like, "You don't know what you're talking about, man. This is what you're saying with using water to bust the carbon off of the valves and clean out the induction system and stuff like that." And he said, "Look, man, I've done this 100 times. I can do it. Just give me a spray bottle with some water, and then I'll show you. Just buy the car." So I ended up picking up this car. Like, it had like 115,000 miles on it. It was in great shape. I think they picked it up for like $600. Nobody wanted to bid on this thing because of how it sounded. It sounded like one cylinder had like some kind of tick-tap misfire going on. And my uncle was like, "Look, I know what it is. I know what it is." And I think he, just a shot in the dark, got lucky. Maybe it busted some carbon or some buildup off one of the end of the spark plugs, or maybe there was a valve that was sticking or something like that. But sure enough, when he went out in the parking lot, he gets a spray bottle and he pulls the intake tube off. And as the vehicle's running, he says, "Go ahead and increase the RPM a little bit." So I'm in there. I get the RPM up to about 1100, 1200 RPM. He says, "Okay, you're good right there." And hold it. So I'm holding it, and he's spraying, misting water down inside the engine. And all of a sudden, you see little bits of misty smoke coming out the back, and it starts running real rough. And then he says, "All right, bring it up a little bit more, bring it up a little bit more." So I bring it up at 1600 RPM. Then he adjusts the nozzle on the spray bottle and starts putting in like thicker, he's spraying a heavier mist into the the engine as it's running, and you could see the engine was struggling. It was really struggling. All of a sudden, it started to warm up a little bit, and the tick went away. Completely went away. My uncle, late 40s, just completely. I thought he was full of crap. I thought for sure this man did not know what he was talking about. So, yeah, some of the old school guys know some tricks that us younger guys have no idea. And a little bit more dangerous, but he was right. Shut it down, let the engine cool down and stuff like that, fired it right back up. The thing ran like it was brand new. Pull spark plugs out of it, and sure enough, they were all kind of carboned up where it'd been sitting a while, and probably a lot of short drives and things like that. But whatever he did with that misting water into the induction system completely steamed the top of those pistons, cleaned up all kinds of junk. Very dangerous. A lot of that carbon ends up probably in the cats, but where they live, they end up basically deleting that stuff anyway because there's no emissions testing. I was pretty impressed with, just the type of knowledge overall that the older generation has that the younger generation doesn't have. And even though, just like he said, a little bit kind of a dangerous thing to do if you don't know what you're doing, but it does work. You're going to get some detonation going on, just real light detonation in the cylinder. You're going to get some misfiring going on. But if you're careful about it and you can control it and you know the motor you're working with, I would never do it, to be honest with you, but he was definitely confident in doing it. He had done it many times. Obviously, it showed because now that engine's super, super, super quiet. No misfire, no nothing. Now, we could branch off and do a different story. I bought a Fox body Mustang with a Chevy small block 350 swap. This thing was pretty quick. It was built, it had Edelbrock heads, Edelbrock intake manifold, Edelbrock carburetor, and I'm thinking to myself, a Chevy engine in a Fox body? At the time I was newer, kind of getting into this field, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I start looking around, I'm like, well, it's a very common thing is to put a Chevy engine in a Fox body Mustang. It's a very popular combination. So I'm at the track and I pull up to the line. This thing's, it's got street slicks on it. It's got a beefed up rear end. I ended up picking this thing up for like $2,600 at auction. They run all kinds of stuff through the auction. And this was my own personal car I was going to have because it was in really, really, really good shape. I pull up the line. At a stage, I hit the line lock. I'm sitting there doing my burnout. Burnout, smoke all over the place. Just amazing, amazing car. Light car, huge burnout. My uncle, he was standing over and he's like, wow, son. This southern thing or whatever. Son, man, that thing does. He was impressed with it. And I do my run, 8th mile run. So I think it run like a 7.8 or something like that. Pretty quick car. 7.8 or 7.8 or 6.8. I don't know what it was. It wasn't super slow. They put a lot of money in this thing. And I pull around and it's got some kind of tick going on. Tick, 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 tick. And it would get worse sometimes. So I pull valve covers off and I'm trying to adjust lifters and adjust this and adjust that and everything else. This old man, he's standing over there, he's looking at me, he's shaking his head. And I look at him, I said, what's going on? And he said, boy, you know what you're listening for? And I said, well, yeah, I got a lifter tick going on. He said, ain't no lifter tick. He said, you gotta listen, it's deep, man. It's not up top, it's deep. And I was like, well, it ain't a rod, Doc. It's not a knock sound. And he said, it's not, but it's deep. He said, listen to what I'm telling you. He said, get up underneath that thing and put your ear down by the transmission. So I get up under it while it's running, and that tick is right in my ear. And he said, you got a cracked flywheel. Sure enough, get the vehicle, shut it down, put it on the trailer, get the vehicle back to the house, pull the transmission out of it. It's a cracked flywheel. Makes the same almost upper end ticking sound. This old timer knew exactly what he was talking about. And that's why I think it's important for us to really learn from our older generation. Yes, some of them can be assholes. Yes, some of them are really frustrated and miserable. That doesn't mean the information they're putting out is not right, though. Sometimes it's hard to deal with somebody that's been in the field so long that's just wore out, but they still have all that knowledge up in their head. They still have a lot of things that they can teach you. It can be frustrating sometimes, but the best thing to do is just listen and learn from these guys. I'm 100% appreciative of them all the assholes that I've dealt with, as well as a lot of the nice, really good teachers. I wouldn't be half the person I am today if it wasn't for them. Learning the ropes, the tricks of the trade and stuff. I figured I'd share a few stories with you this morning before I get out in the water. Y'all be blessed.